If you want to load up on equities, is it cyclical in Europe, or where do you go?
I do believe the valuation gap between US stocks and Europe remains, particularly positions European equities as attractive in the short and medium term, particularly if you consider that in the US, 2/3 of the market's gain have been driven really by the tech stocks. And that has been a very narrow concentration in terms of the market leadership. In Europe, I think going forward, we do have, particularly in relation to the emerging market recovery, much more exposure to the global economy from European names. And I think that with the vaccine rollout, even though it is currently staggered and there are some issues to work around timing, as well as this new strain and proving that it's just as effective against the inoculation, there is more, I think, hope and cheer around European equities going into 2021 than there has been for some time, primarily because of the exposure of the underlying stocks that are listed here to the global economy, and particularly to China, which of course has staged a particularly impressive rebound from the COVID-19 crisis.
You mentioned tech there, and that is clearly an area where Europe hasn't performed as well as the US in many periods. Are you excited about the IPO pipeline, though, Swetha? When you look at European equities and the tech IPOs that could come, we spoke to one VC investor yesterday who was very excited about his own portfolio. But what are you seeing?
I would agree with that. I think 2020 has been a relatively disappointing year for Europe in terms of IPOs, considering the momentum we've seen, particularly from the US most recently, but also from China. And I think this year European investors have typically been a little more skeptical of our homegrown tech names. But this year has really provided a proof point in terms of an inflection point in profitability for many of the names that have been incubated here. And I'm thinking of companies such as Deliveroo, which really came into their own during the work from home era and the lockdown, of course, as well as Klarna, the payments company. So these are companies, I think, that could IPO into 2021, along with other tech names in Europe. And the move by the NYSE just yesterday to allow more direct listings on their market could suggest perhaps that these companies might look to list in the US, as have many other European tech companies, rather than stay listed in Europe, which is, of course, another long-term question mark for the homegrown tech companies of the continent.